So what's going on, guys? This is Boost You. In today's module, we have Prasanna Gadkari. He's done his master's in product design and has been helping the design community ever since. He works for Amazon during these days and as a UX designer, and he will be answering a few questions that we have on user experience design. Okay, so thank you so much, Prasanna. Can you do a little introduction of yourself? What you are currently doing for the UX design community, and then we're going to jump into the questions from there.
Sure, Sharif, and thanks a lot for this really awesome opportunity. I think you are doing a really great job for the design community in general.
Thank you.
And I hope that a lot of students benefit from whatever you are doing. Honestly, you introduced me very well, and just a couple of points to add to what you already said. So essentially, I work as a UX designer, the user experience designer, at Amazon these days. I have worked with a few other companies, which include ThoughtWorks, Eaton Corporation, and Schlumberger, just to name a couple of them, right?
Okay.
And what I do in my current role is I gather the user requirement and I translate them into something more tangible and what the users would like to do. So I would say about 80% of my part is UX, while I do UI design as well, which comprises of the 10% of the part. Another 10% is play and fun. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what I do these days.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so thank you so much for that introduction, Prasanna. I'm definitely very excited to have you and feature you on this course. And towards the end of the course, we're also going to display any social media or any brands or anything that you may want to share with the students that are taking the course, so that they can follow you. Maybe it's on LinkedIn, maybe it's on any other social media platform, etc. So anything that you want to share, I'm going to post it on the screen here for the students to either look at, download, etc. They can follow you, etc. All right, well, thank you so much. Let's jump into the questions.
Sure.
Okay, so for the first question, how does your previous how does your previous career path and schooling help you with user experience design?
That's an important question, I think, and let me come to the answer. So essentially, like the audience already knows, I did my master's in product design. However, it's back in 2009 when product actually meant a tangible product and not really a digital one. So essentially I'm trained in designing physical products, so as to say. And essentially I don't see the user experience design to be fundamentally very different from it, because ultimately what does ultimately a design do, or a designer does, is that they take the problems from the users and they try to solve them. If the solution is good, it will delight the users. If the solution isn't that good, it will at the most be something workable. And this is the basis of the product design and also for the user experience design. So pointing out a couple of similarities is that both of these, the physical product design which I learned during my schooling, and the user experience design which I'm applying these days on the field, which I like kind of self-taught, is something that's both has aspects of collecting data from the user, understanding their requirements, and converting them into something tangible. Another point of similarity is that both of these branches essentially rely heavily on expressing and exploring the concepts. So what I learned during my school, I'm still doing even to this days while I design something for Amazon. And pointing out a couple of differences is that the product design which I learned in the school is something that was heavily reliant on the manufacturing processes, the material used to make the products and so on. However, the user experience design is slightly independent of the technology. For example, the user interface that I will make for say a website would run equally well on an Android phone, or an iPhone, or an iPad, or even a laptop, right? That is because all of them are responsive. So you see there is a slight nuance there, but I'd say about 70% of what I learned as a part of the product design course is still applicable to the user experience design, which I'm doing for my living right now.
Gotcha. No, that's awesome. It's always good to, have like a previous engagement with, whether it be you can be a designer, you can be an architect, etc., but it still leads into your current experience as a designer. For myself, in my past, I've done 3D animation, motion graphics, and graphic design, but that kind of leads into user experience in terms of being able to create functional designs or visual designs for the front end aspect, and as well as creating animations that adhere to a better experience across the board, right, for different platforms, right? So, but no, that's an awesome thing that you have there. For the next question, being in the UX design space, what are some of the things you've been doing outside of work?
So outside of the work, as in typically when I find some free time, like even during my office hours, there are three main things that I do. The first of all is like helping the design community at large. So whenever I come across any student trying to or any professional for that matter, trying to create some sort of UI or a user experience, I try to send them a constructive critique, may it be on LinkedIn, sometimes on Dribble, sometimes even I run across some of the portfolios which often I come across because people mail them to me and so on. But I try to give the constructive critique so that it will not only help that person, but also it will help the design community as large. That is one thing. Second, I have been mentoring on adplist.org.
Okay, I know that.
Lee's initiative. So yeah, I have been helping the young designers and even some of the senior ones with whatever design problems they face. In fact, it's more like a learning experience for me as well, because often I come across some beautifully diversified problems and how the people have solved them in the past and so on. The third thing which I do is I run a short YouTube channel, which I think Sharif will be posting the link
Will do.
Somewhere, which I'll share with you definitely. But yeah, that is what I'm doing, but it's more related with the design entrance exams and not directly related, but these are the main three things which I do of my work, if that answers.
Okay, yeah, no, that does. And real quick to pull it back to the ADP list, where you mentor other UX designers. Can you tell me a little bit, in brief, of what ADP list is exactly and how you mentor others on that platform?
Okay. So ADP list stands for Awesome Design People. It is Felix List initiative, and essentially it is free for all platform where some of the brilliant designers kind of mentor whosoever is needing help for free. So all you have to do is probably go to the adplist.org and just ask someone that you need help in something. And each of the mentors has a specialization. So if you want help in the portfolio, you can search by that.
Gotcha.
If you need help, say switching your career to say UX design or to graphic design, there are specialists for that. If you are looking to practice a specialist interview, then there are folks to help you with that as well. So ADP List is a generalized platform where a lot of folks can come and look for mentors. You can also join as a mentor yourself, or you can choose to be a mentee, so you can actually learn from all these great folks out there. And yeah, the last thing, it's completely free, of course, so you don't have to worry much about that aspect as well.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah, I recently discovered ADP List 2 months ago, and I was really interested in it because the guy that I follow, and you mentioned him, Felix Lee, he's based out in Singapore, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, he's a really good individual, and I will post his information on here as well. But ADP List is a great platform that you guys can also check out to either be mentored by other UX designers or become a mentee yourself. But the full initiative is to find other UX designers to be mentored by, etc. Okay, so all right, let's see. How is your work-life balance working as a UX designer?
So there are two phases to the work-life balance. One was before the COVID hit us.
Right.
But before that, it used to be like fairly a 9 to 5 job. But now the boundaries are slightly blurred between what is like work and what is like life. So, but coming to your point, right? Something that will help our audience here is that essentially the work-life balance these days is comprised of typically the calls that often last for quite a long time, the difficulty in gathering the users, because we as a user experience designers are not face to face with the users. There are difficulties in remote testing because you can't really see the body language of the users, and video calls have their own limitations. So I won't say that the work is bad, but I would have loved that interaction when they are in front of us and so on. But all in all, I will say that observing folks like working and balancing them with their regular life, it's kind of difficult. It's similar case for me, like being a UX designer. Actually, the kind of work seeps into your daily life, and which is what generally happens with everyone, I guess. But yeah. Essentially, outside the work, I do these 3 activities, and that is how I balance my life and my work.
Gotcha.
I hope that answers the question, right?
Yeah. No, it does. It does. It definitely is fairly difficult to. I don't want to say difficult, but it is fairly. You have to manage it differently from pre-COVID versus now, right? Myself, I used to. Like I told you earlier, I used to do keynote presentations at tech boot camps. Like the one that I took before was General Assembly, which is a UX design boot camp. I spoke to some of the students there, and probably like every other month I went up there to speak to some of the students about UX design or what it's like working at AT&T, etc. But now it's kind of like you have to find different meetups or different aspects or talks online, and you have to do like Zoom calls or just live streams to facilitate that. But it's an interesting transition, but sometimes you just have to adapt with the situation. All right.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Do you ever encounter imposter syndrome? If so, how do you counter it?
Oh yeah, that's a very interesting question, because if some designer tells you that they are not facing one, they are either straight away lying to you or their name is Tom Norman.
Yeah.
but okay. On a serious note, right? So the imposter syndrome, by the definition itself, is something that you or anyone gets, not necessarily a designer. So I got it a multiple number of times. Every time I would like speak with some designer, every time I would speak with some manager, trying to convince them the importance of UX design, or trying to show them the methods of UX. I would every time say that, hey, this guy is going to judge me, that he might think that I'm over smart or something. I will like take a step back and start thinking that, did I do it right? But you see that nuance there. It's like you are actually judging yourself. The person in front of you has paid you to be a user experience designer. They believe in you. That's why they hired you in first place.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. So the thing is that you should first of all put yourself in that position that, hey, this guy actually trusts me, and they would really judge you. See, ultimate service at the end of the day. They are doing their job, and so there's no judgment in that, as long as you rely on the data and try not to fool them or confuse them. And that is how you beat the imposter syndrome. So whenever I got that, try to stay possible when for example, when a design manager asks me, hey, dude, how did you arrive at this conclusion? I try not to say that, hey, this is how the UX designer works, or this looks beautiful. I just try to objectify them in terms of the usability principles, or try to get some data from the customers, so like talking with them and trying to see what they mean or how they perceive my design. So actually that takes away the imposter syndrome and makes it slightly more objective. So that's how you do it, right?
No, that's a good way to look at it. I like that. That's really good. Okay. So, what was the most difficult UX interview that you've come across, and then how did you prepare for it?
Oh yeah, the most difficult UX interview is the most recent one as well. The one I faced with Amazon.
Okay.
I cracked it. I'm working for them now. So how did I prepare for that? There are four steps that are more specific to Amazon, I say. But they're more general. So let me walk you through these four steps. So the first step is that you have to be thorough with your portfolio. What I mean by that is that you have to know exactly what you did in your portfolio and why you did it. So if you're showing, say, a radio button, and you should have an explanation ready that why did you use that radio button there, and why did you go for, say, a checkbox or something like that, and what kind of problem you're trying to solve, how did you solve it, what was the feedback you got, and everything of that sort. That is the first thing that I prepared for. So I went thoroughly across my portfolio, tried to poke holes in wherever I could find. I asked feedback from my friends, try to understand what can go wrong, what kind of questions they faced, and so on. So that is the first thing. The second is that there is something in Amazon called leadership principles. So essentially, they are going to try to fit you in the culture of Amazon or the way they work. This is fairly general to any other company, but for Amazon, the leadership principles are fairly straightforward and laid out for you on a piece of paper. So what I really did was I prepared two good examples and two bad examples for each leadership principle, because I know that they are going to ask this question. And it happened exactly like I was anticipating, that they did really go deeper into that, and they asked some good and some not so great examples, and what were the learnings on that. So that is the second thing. The third thing is that see, in Amazon, each like, how would you say that, each department has their own set of interviewees, and they decide the number of rounds to be interviewed for. I faced a total of 12 rounds, which was pretty exhausting in my opinion, but honestly speaking, I enjoyed the experience. However, you should remember that no matter how many number of rounds you are going to face, be sure to ask them that what this round is about. That will help you prepare, and that is what exactly I did. I spoke with the human resource person who was in touch with me, and I tried to ask them that, hey, this is this round, so what are they going to ask me in this round? Do you know approximately, or can you find it out for me? So that will actually help you prepare. So no matter how many rounds they're going to put you through, you will be always one step ahead of them and be prepared on whatever things are going. And the fourth thing is that, see, on spur of the moment, sometimes you cannot pull the answers right from your memory. So what I actually did was I actually had a cheat sheet right in front of me. It was pasted right over my resume, like a sticky note. And I tried to look at my resume, and I would try to remember what it was, and you can understand in that small sticky note how much content can you fit. But I do some icons. So whatever method you use, you know that sometimes it may not work out as intended, but it's best to know these things, plus the business end of the Amazon. So essentially the people who are going to interview you, go to their profiles and try to understand what they're going to throw at you, potentially can throw at you.
Yeah.
So that's how I prepared for this interview.
Gotcha. That's a great technique you got there. Definitely something that you had to prepare for, and you mentioned that this was the most difficult one. So that's really good that you did all that, and now you're working for Amazon. That is amazing.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. So for those who don't have a design eye, like a visual design eye, what advice would you give them, especially the individuals aiming to be an experienced researcher or an experienced architect, if they're trying to aim for that specific field versus aiming for specifically a UI designer? Okay,
that's another interesting aspect. So to answer that, just stepping back one step. Essentially speaking, the architect is the person who actually thinks in terms of the steps that are going to be involved in the user experience. The user experience researcher also called as just user researcher, is the person who is going to collect all the data that is going to substantiate your design. And finally, there are the folks who are going to actually do the design, and those are user experience design who do the wireframes and stuff, and then there are visual designs who actually make the design look visually appealing. Now, if you go down the hierarchy, so honestly speaking, the user experience architect doesn't need to have that of a keen eye, because they are the folks who are going to think more in terms of that how or what is going to flow from where the information is going to go, how is the user going to use them and stuff like that. But nonetheless, that is where they can actually coordinate with the visual designers and try to understand that what is going to be like, how the screen is ultimately going to look like, or maybe look at the examples over the internet and try to figure out that how this information might be shown, and maybe even throw the ideas around to show the visual designers. Another great tip for going about this is knowing the patterns. So what are the patterns? That also I need to tell you. Patterns are essentially the typical interaction. Either those interactions are specific to the operating system. For example, if you are an iPhone user, you will and if you open the mail application, you will have a slide to the right which shows delete that message and so on. Now this is very specific to iPhone. This pattern is there for iPhone. For Android, you can long press and a new menu will pop up and so on. So if you know this kind of patterns, it will help you to internalize what kind of visual design is going to work. Another great tip for the folks who are like struggling with visual design, who don't have eye for visual design, always go back to something called as Gestalt Principles. So just like going slightly off the track to tell that Gestalt Principle is nothing, but there was a group of scientists who tried to answer the question that what makes things look beautiful. And they stumbled across a set of principles which you can easily get if you do a simple internet search. But those sets of principles really puts things into perspective, like making things symmetric makes them look good, or arranging them in a aligning them to a single line makes them look decent, and leaving some uniform space around everything, playing up with white space and stuff like that essentially is the right way to make the visual look great. So these are some of the principles that you can like think about while you're designing, and that will build your eye gradually towards appreciating the visual design. So and any person can learn it. It's not like a rocket science or something. You don't need special skills for that. So you can just understand what all these are.
That's definitely good that you brought up the Gestalt principles. Earlier on in this UX course, I put in one of the modules, I actually put a section on some of the UX principles. So if you guys want, just make sure to go back into that section to review that. But Gestalt Principles is a very important aspect, especially for designing robust experiences for various different device sizes or screen sizes, etc. But it's a definitely good tool, a definitely good way and a principle to follow, especially when designing these experiences too. But thank you for bringing that up too. That's a good example. How do you think design impacts businesses, services, and daily lives in general?
Okay, that's a really great question to answer, because this answer actually differentiates a good designer from a great one. So imagine that your user or the person who is going to use your solution is essentially trying to solve some problem in their life. And that is what a designer is supposed to do. They are going to help that person to solve that difficult problem or that hinders in their life to their design. And that is how design impacts the life of the person who are going to use your application or your product or whatever you are designing. So that is how the design affects the lives of the user. And the design is essentially the service that you're providing them. So the service can be as simple as like solving a problem, trying to gather the data about the problem, and then proposing a solution for that, or even building that solution for them is how you're going to solve them. And ultimately, any design is there to make money. So essentially, that's the business aspect of it. So a better design solution is going to attract a lot of attention. A lot of users will want to solve their problems using this design solution, and thereby they'll be willing to pay a good amount of money in order if that design solution is great.
Right.
For example, many of the people pay a lot of money for using the latest iPhones because it has got a great camera, and a lot of folks are out there taking photographs. So iPhone has tried to solve this problem as compared to the earlier versions. This version has better camera, and that is how they have evolved the design, and that's why folks are buying the new and expensive iPhone right now. So essentially speaking, that is how iPhone is making money, by trying to identify where exactly the user is facing problem and trying to identify and solve that one specific problem. And coming to that aspect, let me tell you about the three pillars of any project, any design project for the matter. So there are folks who are in charge of identifying how the solution is going to make money. They come under different names. For example, they might call themselves design managers, they might be project manager, program manager, vice presidents, and so on. So basically, but their job is to run the business, and if you say give them $10, they will be constantly thinking day and night how to make $100 out of those.
Right.
Then there are going to be folks, that is the second pillar, the folks who are going to implement your design. So those folks are going to be like developers, the quality assurance, the DevOps, the Scrum Masters. So those are the folks who are focused on only implementing your design. They will be focusing more on technology aspects of how to give the service to the customers. And then comes the middle layer, which is you. So you are the person as a designer who is going to take the problem from the business end and try to formulate a solution based on what user is saying, advocating what user would like to do with the solution, what solution will help them ease their life, and so on. And finally, communicating that solution to the developers or the folks who are going to implement it. And that is how you fit in the bigger picture, and that is what really a job of a designer is, to actually go out there and collect what the user really wants and communicate to business that how this is how it is going to make money, and then communicating the solution to the people who are going to implement it in a language that they understand. For example, pixel specifications, how much space to leave around padding, stuff like that, colors. So you may need to communicate hex code and stuff like that. But yeah, that is how the entire ecosystem works in any small or large organization.
Gotcha. That was a great response. And have you, from your own experience, and it doesn't have to be from Amazon, but have you had experience working with smaller companies like startups, or working with smaller individuals who have an idea and they want to bring that forward? Have you had any experience working with that?
Unfortunately, no. I did not have an experience working with a startup. However, I had attempted to start my own company, and it was like a kind of startup. Okay, it was not purely a design company, it was more to do with services. I ran it for about 4 months, but that was the experience which I had. But no, I did not work for a startup.
Gotcha. No, that's great. Okay. I think, from my, I guess I could tell my own experience working for like a smaller organization, but I had the opportunity to work for a company that was based out in New York, and they had a small product, and essentially it's no different from if you were basically freelancing as a designer. And I know a lot of students out there would be doing that, freelancing on the side from their main job, freelancing as a UX designer, UI designer, creating apps, websites, etc. But working for like a startup, it's almost the same as working as freelance, right? You have a client, you have the initial idea, the goal, and what you're trying to build. So you're going to give those business aspects for the website or the application, the app, etc. Whether it's going to be for iOS, Android, maybe it's going to be for a website, maybe it's going to be for the entire system. So you have to create that initial database, right? But when I was working for this client, it was no different than working freelance, because you get the idea and then you just run with it, right? But you still have to adhere to the time frame. When the client wants to see the different aspects, but it's really no different, right? But I just wanted to share my experience with that real quick. For the next question, can you tell me your process on how you work with developers?
That's awesome.
And
No,
Oh,
I said it's really awesome to hear your experience with the startups, right? And
oh, okay, okay.
I was like responding to the earlier question, but yeah, let me take up the next question which you asked me just now. So how do you deal with developers? You said, right? So essentially speaking, if you really see a bit deeper and see where exactly the role of a designer is in the complete ecosystem, that is where you should be able to stand out. So what actually makes a UX designer talk better with the developers and maybe the business teams is that the UX designer is kind of the middle layer. So they are like the translators who like take the business needs and communicate to the bottom layer, which is okay. I shouldn't call it bottom layer or something. It's just like the layer which actually implements the solution. So essentially, that is what the UX designer does. And you have to understand both of those languages. You have to be kind of aware about the different processes which goes at the business level. Like for example, the marketing. So how the business or how your design is going to market or be the ambassador of your brand is one thing. You have to be say aware about the different. So there's something called business requirement document that typically the managers write in order to communicate the business requirement. You should ask clarifications on that. Ask questions like, "Hey, how is this going to impact our business? How it is going to be helpful to the users? How do you intend to make money out of that?" And if you know answers to these questions, right, you will be able to give the solutions that are going to play a bigger role in the entire picture rather than just taking the requirements and just delivering the solutions.
Yeah.
Same goes with the development as well. So you don't have to really know about coding aspects of the design, though it helps to an extent, right? You don't have to. For example, I know barely HTML and CSS, but I say that you should know at least what can be done and cannot be done. For another good way is to go and speak with the developers and try to understand what design system or what development system they already have. Now things with React and many other library-based interfaces. The beauty is that they already have all the components ready with them. So you should go ahead and ask them that, hey, what components do you have ready-made with you? This will actually help you to get all those components, and you should try to use them in your design as much as you can. So it will make the lives of the developers easy and get the designer out of the door really fast. And that is what you should be aware about, and that is what you should be speaking with the developers about. The final thing which I would like to add here is that you should be aware about the file formats. For example, nowadays developers use heavily something called as SVG, Scalable Vector Graphics, which basically doesn't require you to like do different sizes, so that say you have got a call icon. Now that call icon might be used on a web page which is displayed all across different platforms, iPhones, Android phones, maybe your desktop, maybe your iPad, everywhere it is going to show. So with every platform, that icon should be scaling. So it should be taking the right shape or the size as per the platform it is being displayed on, and that is where people use SVG. So you should be aware about these file formats. So if a developer comes and asks you, hey, just give me that icon or something like that, you should know what exactly they're talking about. And if you don't know, that's okay too. You can just ask them. And that is how you deal with the assets. These are core assets, by the way. If you know that.
Yeah. No, thank you for that response. Yeah, I'd like to add that going off the fact that working with developers, you know, in my experience, just working with them, it depends on the company that you go to. So they may have an older system that you're working with, maybe they have a newer system that you're working with, right? So if you come to a team that's working with an old developmental platform, you'd have to adhere to what they're working with, right? And if you're working with a newer platform, for instance, Prasanna mentioned React, right? So you're looking at React Native. You're looking at code bases such as Xcode, Objective-C. Objective-C is an older language that was built on the Apple platform. But if you look at React Native, this platform can scale to both platforms of Android and iOS, right? And so you'd have to listen to the developer's needs or listen to the system that they're working with. Are they working with this newer system that was built by Facebook, React Native? So if they're working with that system, that means you can scale your design or your visual design library to a better extent because they're working with a better library. But if you work for a company which you may end up working for, they have an older system. So sometimes you may have to adhere to that design system or that older developmental system, right? It sucks, but sometimes that's just a part of the job, right? And going off the point that you mentioned about SVG icons, right? So with SVG icons, that's a very good icon, I guess like a very good format that scales for designers as well as it scales for the code as well. We used to have to just export PNG, we'd have to export JPEG or just these other formats that really sucked because you have to work with that format and it would be blurry. It would just, oh my gosh, I really hated it. But now I think this was actually recently with my team, we started probably like almost a year ago, we'd have to export an XVG. Well, before that, we'd have to export PNG and we'd have to figure out different sizes. But now we export SVG, and it's a better format to I guess what's the word I'm trying to say, to export for a clearer quality, right? A more finer detail quality, right? So definitely work with your developmental team, see their needs, see their goals, what system are they building for, But yeah. Thank you for that response, Prasanna. That was a good conversation.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, true.
Okay, so for the next question, what's the most important aspect of your portfolio, and how could somebody catch the recruiters or hiring UX managers' attention within that portfolio?
Okay. I think all of the designers out here are like looking to find land their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, it's there are three things which you need to remember for the portfolio. The first is that keep all your project diverse. So what I mean by that is essentially, suppose you pick up the first case study or the first project and you make it slightly user research heavy, that actually showcases your user research skills. The next case study you pick up and do it slightly user experience design heavy, so you do all the kinds of you do all detailed wireframes, you do all the journey mapping, you do stuff like detailed design of the user flows and all those stuff that goes into user experience design. And then the third case study, you can focus on showcasing your visual design aspects. Maybe you can design the icon for that application. You can think about different graphics that might entice the user into using the application, onboarding journeys, and other visual heavy content. For example, even small icons, for example, delete icon, or even the fun interaction. So keep all the three or four you diverse from each other, focused on different aspects of the design. That is the first thing. Second, make sure that you have an active Dribble account. Now, based on my experience, I know a lot of folks actually have a very beautiful Dribble account. However, their Dribble account isn't supported by the case study. What I really mean by that is, suppose you post a shot on Dribble of your app. Now, as a UX design manager, they want to hire you for making such a beautiful shot, but they don't know whether you kept on your feet on that kind of design, and or are you just like copying someone else's work and just modifying it for your intents?
Right.
So you should point back saying that, hey, I have got a portfolio, the complete case study on the thinking behind how I reached this beautiful looking shot, and that is the second aspect, which not only Dribble shot but also thinking behind it goes, and that two ties in together. And the third thing, which I think is very important, is that referrals. So it's kind of difficult nowadays. So with lot of social media noise coming in everywhere. So even if you have great Dribble account, you may have a great media presence. you might be a king of Instagram or a queen of Instagram, and everyone would love their shot. You'll have like 1,000 likes. However, when it comes to getting a job or landing a job, always your best friend is the person who's going to tell their managers that, hey, I work with Sharif. He's really an intelligent guy. He has great working style and he gels up with the team. He knows different formats like Svg. He has worked in a number of startups and he's a great person. We'd really like to have a team, and that is worth 1 million portfolios. Yeah, so keep your friends very close and treat them once in a while, so they will like refer you to the job they're working with.
Exactly.
That helps.
Yeah. Very good. No, that was a good response to that. Definitely agreed. Okay, so we got 2 more questions. What are 2 pieces of advice you can give to individuals pursuing a UX UI design career?
The first piece of advice is fairly simple, that know thy processes. So there would be a general design thinking process that you will come across at many places, or during your career you might have actually learned it. However, you should know where to use which process. So each process has its pros and cons. For example, you should be aware about what is card sorting, what is a reverse card sorting, and where to use which one. You should know where to go for persona and where to create user profile. So stuff like that. If you know these processes well, they will help you to distinguish which process is going to yield you what results, and it will also help removing the so-called imposter syndrome, which Sharif was speaking about a few moments back. It will like ground all your confidence there, that saying that, okay, I know this process, I know exactly how to solve this problem, and I know what to deliver for both the management teams and for the development teams. So you know exactly what processes are there. That is the first advice which I give you. Second is that always, no matter how small or big or complex your design is, always focus on design systems. So what are design systems? Essentially, you try to create a homogeneous look for your entire design and try to include as many components as possible, or potentially you can use in your design. Some of the great design systems are, for example, Mailchimp has a great design system. You can go to them. Airbnb is another great design system, but the biggest one is the material design system which Google has designed. So I recommend you study different design systems and see what all components are needed. You can emulate them, you can adapt to your design. So those 2 things will always be there with you for your entire career, and I don't think they are going to go out of fashion anytime soon. So these 2 other things, right?
Okay. No, that's great pieces of advice. And lastly, do you have any advice on the UX interview process? What it's like from a ballpark, what to expect, as well as how to design against the design challenge. And this can be a take-home design challenge. This could be a whiteboard challenge. Obviously, like during this time of COVID, we're 9 times out of 10, we're going to be doing a take-home design challenge. Do you have any advice on these aspects?
Yeah, sure. So one of the biggest and most difficult part I faced during my interviews was something called the Amazon's Whiteboard Design Challenge, and people dread by this name. It's called Raise the Bar Challenge. So essentially, I was asked to design a Pinterest app from the scratch, and I had never seen Pinterest app at that point in time. I was using the desktop version, and I was saying that, no, dude, I'm going to fail this round for sure. However, what really will help you through this kind of challenges is that one, that make sure that you get the problem correct. So if you are asked, say tomorrow in the whiteboard challenge or even take home challenge, that hey, what exactly are you trying to solve? Are you trying to solve? Are you trying to include a new feature? Are you trying to solve a problem that is not being solved? For example, in Pinterest, I had to stop and ask the folks who gave me this challenge that, hey, why do you need to redesign this app? This already is out there, right? So what are you expecting me to do? Anything new you want me to do on this and so on? So you should ask those kind of questions or clarifications that you really want to. That is the first thing. The second thing is that stick to your process. So what is your process going to be? If you are facing a design challenge which requires you to like talk with the users, or even if it's not explicitly mentioned that go and talk with your user or the audience, you should make it a point to call a couple of your friends at most. That is like the guerrilla design method. So you should just go and speak with someone, try to understand what they feel about it, because you may be siloed in your own perception that, okay, I feel that the user would require this, as against that, yeah, my friend told me that they actually face this problem, and so on. So you will be grounded in your data, and that is what you'll be doing in your company when you actually get that job as well. That is the second thing. The third thing is, if that is not accessible, you call out that as an assumption. So whatever design challenge is, either the whiteboard one or the take-home one, you always stop, you always write down, hey, I'm assuming that user would want this, and this is because of blah 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 reasons. So you just tell them that, hey, I'm assuming and I'm making a educated guess at the assumptions there. That is the second thing. And the third and most important thing is that make sure that, talking about the whiteboard challenge, let me give you the 3 tips which will really help you in making the whiteboard challenge. So first of all, make sure that you clarify whatever the doubts you have. For example, if you are asked that, for example, I was asked to design the Pinterest app, and I had to go back to them and say that, hey, the Pinterest app is already out there, so why do you want me to redesign it? What's wrong with the current app, or what is, are you trying to include a new feature or something? And that is where you really ask for clarifications, and don't be shy on doing that, because it will like simplify your life and help you deliver the correct solution. The second important aspect of both for whiteboard and for take-home assignment is that make sure you talk with someone, maybe your friend, maybe your colleague, or maybe your neighbors as well is good. This is called a guerrilla technique for doing user research, but in a pinch this works really effectively. So what you really want to do is, instead of relying on your own intuition or understanding of the problem, you actually go ahead and talk with someone and try to understand, and then quote them, saying that at least you have done some sort of user research instead of like assuming. And ultimately, if you have to assume, make sure you call that out as an educated guess. For example, you can say that, okay, I'm assuming that the users are going to say be on the iPhone. So they are not going to be Android users, and that is because 80% of the American folks are using iPhone, and that's fine. You can make a educated assumption. So I'm designing my best solution around iPhone, and that's perfectly fine. And the third and important aspect is, I have observed that people do not understand wireframes. Neither do they understand the information architecture and stuff like that. So make sure you at least include 1 or 2 final visual designs of your work, even if it is not a part of the assignment. So many of the times they will only say include wireframes, don't take more than a day to design this, and so on. However, be pertinent and show them some of your visual design skills as well. Just include even a couple of the most salient screens in your work, so it will help them to gauge your skills, as well as it will put a face to your entire workflow and the wireframes. So you are not a part, but make sure you do that, so you'll have end-to-end assignment ready with you. So those are the aspects which that will help you down the line.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Prasanna, for that last bit of advice. That was awesome. Especially for the whiteboard challenge aspect. I think I've only had a few whiteboard challenges in my own experience. One was for this aviation company based out in North Carolina in the States. But it was more of a take-home design challenge, and I think I had to redesign, or the challenge was to choose an app to redesign and come up with a better experience. And it was more of a quicker time frame too, so I had like 3 to 4 days to do it. It was pretty interesting when I first did it, but the app that I chose was I think it was either Craigslist or eBay. Are you familiar with those apps?
Yeah.
And so, because I had to think of an app that had a terrible experience and something I want to create something better. And I thought to my head, I was like, you know what? Craigslist, I don't think they've ever updated their experience since its original conception, right? So I chose Craigslist.
Yeah.
And I started designing it, but I think another job came up at the time during that interview process. But yeah, that it was a very interesting process to recreate the Craigslist app, because they've never updated their app. It's weird.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you there, right? Because if you, as a practice, maybe the students can actually take up such badly designed apps like Craigslist, which is like basically like a bulletin board system kind of structure, and like take it up and maybe try to find a better solution to that. Assuming, of course, you'll be assuming the requirements, but it will make another great portfolio piece as well. You never know.
Exactly. You never know. I try to tell individuals, because sometimes they come up to me and ask me like, "Hey, Sharif, is it bad to recreate an existing app that's out there?" Or because, like, for instance, if that student or that person going into the UX field, they have 1 or 2 case studies on their portfolio. In my response, I'm always telling them, dude, if you can recreate another app experience in your own conception, right? Rebuild that design, make it better, create a better experience, do that and put that on your portfolio. There's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
I always tell people that.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Well, that kind of wraps it up with our questions, Prasanna. Is there any last minute thoughts that you may have to the students who have taken this course?
Honestly speaking, I have a couple of thoughts around. Like, the first thing is that what platform to use for portfolio. So it's essentially 2 things, right? The first thing is that the platform which you choose should be could be anything. There are multiple good platforms, such as this UX Folio, there is Behance, and there are multiple other platforms which you can just find across the internet. However, make sure that you do not use stuff like mailing the PDF to the potential recruiters, because invariably they are not going to look at it in most of the times. So make sure you put your portfolio online. Maybe you can keep password protected if you want to show to a select audience, but don't use stuff like Google Drives, which many folks have done in the past, and it doesn't reach the right audience. The second thought which I have around the entire thing is that make sure you pick up the correct tool. You will not face this problem. But
so, with that being said, Prasanna, just if you can mention some of the pages that you have, like your YouTube page. I know you mentioned that, some of your social media channels as well, and I will make sure to post that on the screen, as well as in the documents that I will give to the students as well.
Sure. I honestly am not very active on social media. The most used, so most of the time you will find me on LinkedIn, which is the best way to reach out to me.
Okay.
You can reach out to me on my email, which is like a very old way of reaching out to me, but yeah, I still regularly check my emails, so you can be sure of that. I am recently mentoring on ADP list as well. So if you want to book some of my slot, you can go to ADP list and you can click on the book a slot with me, and you should be able to talk with me if you did one-on-one with me.
Gotcha.
And I have got a YouTube channel, but it more is for folks who are trying to clear the entrance exam for design.
Gotcha.
So it may not be for everyone, but yeah, I do run a YouTube channel on that.
Okay. Okay. So what is the name of the YouTube channel? Do you want to share that or no?
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's called Design Prep, like in design preparation, but it's called Design Prep. So that's the name of the channel. You can just search by, or you can just enter YouTube/design prep, and you should be able to reach.
Okay, sweet, sweet. I'll make sure to put that in the documents for people to be able to click on that link, as well as your LinkedIn page, and if so, your email as well. Thank you so much, Prasanna, for this interview process. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of students that are gonna reach out to you, so be prepared for that. But
Absolutely.
but thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thanks again, guys, for watching this module. All right, you take care, Prasanna.